I'm going to make some disclaimers for this presentation as I was going through, because my whole life's in storage right now. So the computer that this presentation is actually on is in just storage. So we had to kind of quickly grab it and put it together again. It does seem to squirrel a lot. So forgive me, but I think it's interesting, squirrels. So, and squirrel. I will probably say Celtic for all Celtic people, even though that's really kind of a crummy description, because what we call Celtic is a bunch of different tribal groups. So it's almost like saying Native American, because they're all different, because there's Apache and Navajo, and there's a whole bunch of different tribal groups that have roughly some similarities. And so that's what we're saying for the, did you have a question? Oh, okay, sorry. So that's why I'm like, Celt's not a very good description, because they did all have different tribal names. They're related by somewhat of their language. Michelle did a wonderful presentation on language. That's coming. Oh, well, it is a wonderful presentation. Stay tuned. And also, like, some of their practices. So you'll see, like, some tribes that they say, oh, they're Germanic, have some similarities to what we would think of as Celtic tribes. And also during this presentation, I'm going to be using the term head and skull interchangeably, though we'll try to be specific to which thing I mean, because I know that a head is different than a skull, head being the fleshy bits. There will be unverified personal gnosis mentioned, and this is the concept that somebody's spiritual insights may be valid for them without being generalizable for other people's experiences. So, and meaning I don't have any history to back it up, but this is my kind of idea or take on it, or in my personal life, this makes sense to me kind of thing. So take it away, Vanna.
All right.
So who were the Celts? I kind of went over all of that a little bit. We know it's Celt, C-E-L-T. We know that's pronounced with a hard K sound because it was the Greeks that kind of named them Keltoi. So if you hear the Boston Celtics, they're actually saying it wrong for the Celts versus the Celtics. And I had been told once that it was like Catholics versus Protestant use Celt versus Celt. I don't know how true that is. It was hearsay. Somebody told me.
Never heard that one. Wow.
That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, it could be some crazy information somebody told me because they were crazy individuals. And like I was saying, these are not necessarily going to be a distinctive genetic ancestry. And there was no like Celtic nation. They were always kind of different tribal groups. There is a point in history where Catilius and Vercingetorix tried to join the tribes together to fight the Romans. It was almost successful, except for they didn't get like half. They got half the tribes together and the other half didn't want to join. So the Romans conquered them as a result, kind of.
They were Anglican.
Pardon?
They were an Anglican, yeah.
Yep. Vanna? So the Celts inhabited all over the British Isles, as you can see up here. But yes, during their Iron Age, basically, during the height of their civilization, they covered all of this. So yeah. So you have your Celtiberians kind of over here. Sorry. I was like, here, let me point.
No, just say, I know where they are.
Okay. Yes, you had some wonderful pictures and slides in there. I was like, oh, I wish I could use these. They're awesome. Well, they weren't necessarily ones that I could use. So, of course, the British Isles, France, parts of Germany, Bohemia, Poland, much of Central Europe, the Iberian Peninsula, northern Italy, the Balkans, and as far east as Anatolia in modern-day Turkey. So, if you would like to change the slide, Vanna.
Who knows who this guy is?
Oh, it's from Asteroids.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
One of the greatest.
So this is from a German comic called Asterix. And the name of the druid is Getafix.
They had all these little cute little names, like Asterix was the hero, so then there was Getafix,
The bard is Cacophonous.
Carcophonix, yep.
Yes.
What else?
Asterix.
There was Obelix, who was, he moved the big stone monuments.
Incredibly strong. Yeah.
So they all had cute little names and stuff. So the Druids were the priest class of the Celtic people. They weren't a separate group of people necessarily. They were all kind of the same, because I've had discussions where people insisted the Druids and the Celts are two different people.
Yeah.
They're the same people, but they're the priest class. They tended to run most facets of society. They were judges, healers, historians, poets, entertainers, and they could be both male and female. So there is historical evidence of female Druids. And I wouldn't see why you couldn't have female Druids. You had Celtic chieftainesses like Boudica, as my friend's shirt proclaims. So she was a pretty powerful chieftainess in her time. Let's see, the Celtic tribes were different, so their beliefs and burial practices were different. And we're also looking at burial practices through the lens of time, so we may miss things. And what seems to be certain for all Celts is a belief in an afterlife. Well, the belief in the afterlife is found in the Celtic lore, but it's also found in the archaeological sense. Vanna? If you look at the Horchdorf, I think that's how you say that. Horchdorf. I don't know how to. Other disclaimer. Other disclaimer is I probably am not pronouncing any of these things correctly. In fact, I might
pronounce three different ways, because in Bavaria they would say Hakov.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
It could be.
Yeah.
So I'm not so much with the pronunciation. I'm lucky to get English correct. And I'm confused on that too. So this is a grave that was found in Baden-Württemberg in Germany. And this is a burial very similar to what you think of Viking ship burials. So he was sent into the afterlife with all kinds of things. So over in the right, the very right corner, he's got a big cauldron that was filled with gallons and gallons of mead.
Oh, yeah.
He also had a specific couch there that he was sent in on. And he has little men holding him up, which that'll probably be something we talk a little bit later, little anthropomorphic figures holding him up.
Couch, or little men.
And then you see his shoes are very orange. So if you look over on the left here, this is his shoes had actual gold on them when they found him. He also had, looks like a dagger, which was also I don't know, anthropomorphic, which I'm having problems saying today. He had a torque or neck ring, bracelet, and all that fun stuff. He's actually pretty famous. He had a hat made of birch bark, a gold-plated dagger, which we're saying anthropomorphic, amber jewelry, a razor knife, nail clippers, comb. He was sent into the afterlife with pretty much everything.
What? Joke. He's joking.
We need to send this man away. As I'm like, I wore amber today. Okay.
I'm sorry, bad joke.
Sorry.
Interrupt your train of thought, I apologize.
No, you're fine. Anyway, there was about 100 gallons of mead in that cauldron. I always forget that part. So basically, very similar to a Viking ship burial, where they sent them off with all their goods. So basically what I'm trying to illustrate here is that they did have a belief that when you died, something happened to you. You went somewhere, you went into an afterlife. You may have needed to either pay to get into the afterlife, or once you got there, you had a big party with your buddies. So that's why, they sang you with gallons of mead. And sometimes, like with the Viking burials, servants or concubines or animals were sacrificed to go into the afterlife with their chief. You see that in the 13th Warrior. Yeah, they do that in the 13th Warrior, where they ask for volunteer to go with the king into the afterlife, or the chief. There's also a strong element of cremation during the Bronze Age, which is a little bit before the Iron Age, of course. Like the Beaker people, they would cremate them and put them in urns and whatever. There is some excarnation practiced, and that's where you put, like the sky burials, like you put the body out for the animals to pick the bones clean. Sometimes they'd collect the remains and keep them in a vault or something like that. Not a whole heck of a lot of that with the Celtic people, but there is some of that in the really early stages. Caesar observed that the belief in the afterlife made the Celts fearless in battle. He also proposed the Celts believed in transmigration of the soul, which is similar to reincarnation, kind of. It's basically the belief that your soul immediately upon death goes somewhere into another animal, another person, a plant, something. Whereas, as you probably know, reincarnation is you reborn theoretically into another human, but, another body. And this is where some of the unverified gnosis comes from, is that my friends and I believe that when a warrior was slain, he's reincarnated. You need to get his head so he can be reincarnated into the tribe. So we keep that warrior's power in our tribe to fight, the bad other tribes or the Romans or whoever. It's damn Romans. Let's see. Also, children in the tribe were not full members of the tribe until about 3 years of age. It was still believed that they could be the Sidhe, or aka fairies, until that age. And then at age 3, then they receive their name and become a full member of the tribe. Though realistically, this is probably due to infant mortality rates at that time period, which I should have looked statistics up for that. So the Sidhe or the fairies, Vanna. Aww. No, actually, I mean this next one picture.
Yeah, that's what we mean.
That's what
When
we
we say
mean.
she and the fairies, that's what we mean.
And this is an artist's rendition of a banshee, actually, or a banshee, woman of the mound.
Can you go back
And-
to the previous slide?
Pardon?
Sure.
Oh.
Back to the previous slide. So this is more of the modern rendition of what we think fairies look like, and this was
Very
an
modern.
influence from Victorian era with the whole flower fairy drawings and things of that nature.
Yeah, a Midsummer Night's
Yeah,
Dream.
the wings don't show up until World War I.
Yeah.
Typically,
Somebody got
I'm sorry, Mark.
essentially lazy and couldn't draw a bird, so drew the wings on it real quick. Tinkerbell didn't exist 100 years ago.
Well, the funny thing about Tinkerbell is most people don't realize she could be only good or evil at one time. She couldn't be both because she wasn't big enough. So she was either good Tinkerbell or evil Tinkerbell. She was often trying to off Wendy.
She was.
Yeah.
Many times
She was.
throughout the book and the movie. She was trying to kill off Wendy
Oh,
Darling.
Mhm.
All right, so moving on.
The fairies the Sidhe usually have a disdain for people. They would tend to replace human babies with one of their own to be cared for, or they were believed to replace full-grown adults, as in the case of Bridget Cleary.